Hey guys, Swift here. Ryan Poles was busy at it again today, signing two wide receivers, Tajae Sharpe, a 27-year-old former fifth-round pick, and Dante Pettis, a 26-year-old former second-round pick. Both guys are entering their prime and bring more size and playmaking ability to the wide receiver room. I will touch on that after I talk about both players. We've also added a third string quarterback, Nathan Peterman. Don't get too excited and don't overreact. This move was perfectly fine. He's a camp body and an extra preseason arm. Now, both of the wide receivers we added have playmaking ability, size, and athleticism. They bring a lot to the table. I'm going to dig in a little deeper on both players and then talk about our wide receiver room as a whole. First, let's talk about new Bears wide receiver Tajae Sharpe. Tajae Sharpe is a wide receiver from the University of Massachusetts with 4.55 speed. He's 6'2" and 194 pounds. He's an excellent route runner. He uses his body to gain leverage against defensive backs and make plays on the ball. He has excellent footwork and good athleticism. He played mostly on the outside, but he has played a bit in the slot as well. He has a slim frame and small hands for an NFL wideout. He struggles versus press coverage, but uses excellent footwork, body control, and leverage to get open versus man coverage. He excelled at it in college, and it still shows today. Sharpe was top 10 in the NFL at getting open versus man coverage last season, joining Darnell Mooney and giving us two players who were top 10 versus the man last year. He didn't get a ton of opportunity, but he showed he still has the savvy footwork to beat man coverage and has some potential left to his game. He's able to high point balls and make sideline catches. He is a high IQ and high motor player. He is a good blocker, and he will put his body on the line and lay out to make tough catches. If Tajae can stay healthy, he can definitely stick around and adds more size and talent to our wide receiver room, which is suddenly becoming very crowded. Sharpe isn't quite the burner that Pettis is, but he's bigger with a better catch radius, and he's a better route runner. Next up, we have Dante Pettis, a 6'1", 186-pound wide receiver from Washington who ran a 4.32 40-yard dash. He's an explosive athlete who is also a polished route runner. He shows great acceleration and decent long speed. He has a refined route tree and can attack all three levels of the defense. He also has good hands and can find holes in zone coverage. He's good after the catch, was a great punt returner who scored 9 punt returns in college and added another 24 receiving TDs. Pettis was a playmaker. He had the lowest drop rate of any wide receiver in the Pac-12 with just 1 drop on 54 targets. He also caught 12 of 18 deep balls, with all 6 of his incompletions deemed uncatchable by PFF. I have heard some talks about how Pettis wanted to make a reality show, and people in the 49ers organization questioned his love for the game. He's an exciting playmaker and young enough to still make a difference. I guess it partially depends on where his head is at. Coming out of college, I watched some tape on Pettis. He was a smooth route runner who almost never had to face press coverage. His biggest concern coming into the NFL were his small hands and lack of strength paired with his inability to beat press coverage. Pettis had a good rookie year, catching 5 touchdowns on top of 467 yards. He showed playmaking ability and was tied for first in the entire NFL in yards after catch average. He had an impressive 7.9 yards after catch, plus averaged 17.3 yards per reception. Pettis showed his skills, but he struggled to stay healthy. He has suffered multiple knee and ankle injuries throughout his short career. Staying healthy has been one of his biggest downfalls. If healthy, Pettis could be a playmaker out of the slot who could also bring a return ability. I don't think Pettis has gained the strength to play on the outside, but he is a guy who can be exciting if used correctly. He's another guy who can do a lot of damage on screens and slants, adding to a theme that Ryan Poles and company are bringing in a lot of guys capable of doing damage with the ball in their hands. I haven't heard this mentioned once. Out of all the narratives and bad takes flying around, nobody is talking about how good these wide receivers are with the ball in their hands. Honestly, this is overlooked. We haven't had wide receivers this capable of making big plays out of nothing in a long time. And what a drought, all the way back to Devin Hester and Johnny Knox before him. Mooney can make some great things happen, but nobody else had that ability on last year's roster. They just had speed, and then A-Rob was great at contested catches. We now have a handful of players capable of making big plays out of nothing. This can't be understated. What is one way to make the quarterback's job easier? Give him guys who can take short passes and turn them into chunk yardage and big-time plays. Bayless Jones Jr. can do that. Byron Pringle can do that. Darnell Mooney can do that. Dante Pettis can also do that. Tajae Sharpe can do a little bit of that. David Moore can do a little bit of that. I even believe that Equinemius St. Brown and Daz Newsome have a little bit of that ability after the catch as well. This wide receiver group has improved dramatically, no matter what the media narratives and Jeremy Laytons of the world want you to believe. Not only do they all have much more ability with the ball in their hands, they're also much more athletic and, wait for it, much taller. Last year we had just one wide receiver on the entire roster who was over 6 feet tall. Think of the players we brought in. Pringle is 6'1". St. Brown is 6'5". Bayless Jones Jr. is 6 feet tall. David Moore, also 6 feet tall. Dante Pettis is 6'1". Tajae Sharpe is 6'2". Henry Litwin is 6'1", and Cyrus Holder is 6'4". That's right. We now have 8 wide receivers on the roster that are at least 6 foot tall. Last year we only had A-Rob. That means Mooney, who was our second tallest wide receiver, currently sits as our 9th or 10th tallest wideout on the roster. That is crazy to think about. Poles has completely changed the look of this wideout group, and all you hear in the media is that the Bears didn't do anything for Fields. When was the last time we brought in 5+ players who can make plays with the ball in their hands at wide receiver? Plus a bunch of rookies, plus a bunch of these guys are taller than 6 feet. National media and lazy Bears writers want you to believe that Poles did nothing for Justin Fields. It gets clicks and they love it. However, I ask you to look beyond those narratives and look at the entire roster that's being put together. We may not have a legit true #1 wide receiver, but only about 8 to 10 teams really do. On top of that, we need playmakers. Poles has brought in a bunch of guys who all have the ability to make plays. They all have size and athleticism. This wide receiver group is much better than last year's. That is something I would argue with against anyone. A-Rob was overrated, and while he can make big plays, he is not a true #1 wide receiver either. He should fit in well in LA as a #2, but don't let that fool you. That's all he is at this point in his career, a #2 wideout. Last year, Darnell Mooney surpassed him as an even better #2 wideout. Getsy and Poles are looking for more guys to take the pressure off Mooney and Fields. We have a ton of options, and the competition is going to be fierce. Training camp and preseason would be the most fun and exciting it's been in my lifetime. Never seen so many back of the roster guys who have potential and actually have a shot to make the roster. We have a lot of open spots, and there will be surprises. I will be here breaking it down for you guys like always. Also, I have one last thing I want to touch on. We also signed quarterback Nathan Peterman. He will be our 3rd string quarterback and training camp body. I want fans to understand why we need a guy like this on the roster. I just finished talking about the amount of wide receivers we have, right? Well, how can you evaluate all those guys if you don't have a backup QB that can throw to them? We don't want to overplay Justin Fields. We also can't expect Trevor Siemian to take that many snaps. We sure as heck don't want to see him playing 3+ quarters in every preseason game. That's a quick way to get your backup hurt. We also need a third guy who is capable of getting the ball to some of these wide receivers so we can better evaluate them. And that's what Nathan Peterman is. He's not going to be a starter. He doesn't have a lot of upside. He hasn't been great in the NFL, but he is at least an NFL level backup quarterback who can let us see what we have in some of these wide receivers. We need another arm capable of that in order to evaluate all these guys. Anyone telling you any different doesn't know ball. Thanks for watching as always, and until next time, guys, bear down.